We're diving into something that feels like it's been around forever: financial management. I mean, it's such a fundamental part of every business today. But what if I told you this entire discipline has a very specific and surprisingly recent origin story? Let's turn back the clock and uncover the moment this whole field was born out of, well, a little bit of chaos.
So let me just ask you this straight up. Was financial management always its own thing, a separate field of study? It feels so essential now, right? But the answer is a big, resounding no. For most of history, the complex practice we now know it didn't exist.
Okay, so our story really kicks off with this massive upheaval in the business world. People call it the Great Consolidation. And look, this wasn't just some minor market adjustment. No, this was a seismic shift. All of a sudden, you had these brand new problems, like how do you manage money on a national scale? How do you even figure out what these huge merging companies are worth?
And the scale of this change? I mean, it was absolutely staggering. The whole business landscape just got flipped on its head. We went from an economy of pretty small, local companies with fairly simple operations to an era completely dominated by these enormous, consolidated enterprises. These new giants had incredibly complex structures, and their need for cash, their financial needs, were on a level nobody had ever seen before.
So, when are we talking about here? We can pretty much pinpoint this to the early 20th century. That's when this consolidation movement really took off, creating the giant corporations that would basically define the modern economy.
And here's where it gets really interesting. All this new complexity, it created chaos. The old tools, simple bookkeeping, getting a loan from the local bank, they just couldn't handle it anymore. You couldn't run a nationwide operation with a local mindset. So a new discipline had to be born, not out of some academic theory, but from the urgent, practical needs of this new industrial world.
And this was the answer: financial management. It popped up as its very own field of study, designed from the ground up to give professionals the rulebook they were desperate for, the tools they needed to manage the finances of these massive new corporations. It was a direct response to a real-world problem.
Okay, so what did this new discipline actually look like? It wasn't just some fuzzy idea, it was a practical toolkit. It literally established the rules for this brand new, high-stakes game of corporate finance, and it was all built on a few core ideas.
So this new toolkit really stood on three main pillars. First up, you had to learn the key conventions, sort of the accepted ways of doing things in this big new corporate world. Next, you had to understand the essential rules for handling these massive flows of money. And finally, you had to master financial accounts. This was the new language for tracking and talking about a company's financial health. These three things became the bedrock of the whole practice.
So that's the origin story. But why does a business revolution from over 100 years ago still matter to us today? Well, because the fundamental reason financial management was created in the first place is probably more relevant now than it's ever been.
It all boils down to this one simple, timeless principle: financial management exists to bring order to complexity. And wherever you find that complexity, whether it's in a giant corporation, a tiny startup, or the entire global economy, you are going to find an absolute need for solid financial management to make sense of it all.
And as our source material really drives home, this is an ongoing evolution. The field didn't just show up and then freeze in time. It was born from the challenges of the 20th century, and it just keeps adapting and changing to meet the challenges of our time. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to chew on, doesn't it? We are living through our own era of massive change. We're facing new complexities like AI, crypto, globalization, you name it. So the big question is, what's the next evolution of financial management going to look like? What new rules and new tools are we creating right now to manage the complexity of this century?